things. Moderating the event today, we have Ray Makela, CEO at the Sales Readiness Group, and Matt Heinz, President at Heinz Marketing. And in our panel, we have Gerry Gallagher from GM Nameplate, Mike Andrews from Smartsheet, and Darren Nerland with The Grid. If I can have everyone turn your cameras on so we can see all your beautiful faces. Thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, Ray and Matt, I'll let you take it from here.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Alonso. Thanks for getting us kicked off. And thank you very much for Matt Heinz and Heinz Marketing for partnering with us on this webinar today. We'll give a chance for the panel to introduce ourselves, but to Mike, Gerry, and Darren, thank you so much for participating, for being willing to share and collaborate with us on this. And for the audience, I guess I'll kind of give the big reveal here is we don't have all the answers, and I wish we did. We just cut to the last slide and just give it to you and we'd be done. But I think what's really interesting is when Matt and I started collaborating on this idea and thinking about putting a panel together, just the learnings that have already happened and the discussions that we've already have, to me, have been really very gratifying and learned a lot. And I look forward to learning from the panel. One thing I've really seen over the last couple of months is the willingness for people to be a little vulnerable, to collaborate and to share with each other. And that's really what this webinar is. If you've attended an SRG webinar in the past, we're going to do a little different format today. So we're going to give the panelists a chance to contribute and collaborate, and we're going to hear from our audience, and we're going to ask for your input as well. And then we'll try to capture this as well in a future blog post. So looking forward to that. But again, I'm Ray Makela with Sales Readiness Group, one of the managing directors. I also manage our sales team, so I am carrying a bag and managing a team, and we'll bring in some of our own lessons along the way. But Matt, again, let me just turn it to you first. Thank you so much. Maybe you could say a little bit about yourself, your role, and your background, and then we'll go through the team here.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Matt Heinz, Heinz Marketing. We help companies build more predictable pipelines, mostly from the marketer's perspective. But key to doing that is having a really tight collaboration with, the sales organization and sales management. And I would agree, Ray, a couple of things. One, level of interactivity between companies, just sharing what's working, what's not, what they're trying has been significant. I think the level of the grace that people have given each other in this moment, both peer-to-peer as well as within their teams, has been really heartening to see. And I appreciate that we're able to do this format here today as well. I think we're all used to staring at people talking on screens all day long right now, and so the last thing I think people want is another 45-minute broadcast of someone presenting. So I think conversations are more interesting and more useful right now than broadcasts. And I really think that this is going to be a great conversation. We've got three great leaders that are all, we're all chewing glass and figuring this out together. And so I'm looking forward to sort of hearing what they're working on and then getting some questions and insights from the audience as well.
That's great. Thanks again. And so Matt and I will be kind of co-moderating this. I'll kind of lead through, and then Matt will dive in, and we'll explore some of these questions in further detail. But Mike, thanks very much for being here today. Appreciate you both as a client of SRG and working with Heinz. So we share a number of clients with Heinz Marketing. But Mike, maybe you could say a little bit about your role and your organization as we jump in here.
You bet, Ray and Matt. Great to join you and to be a part of this. I lead our enterprise business, what we call strategic accounts. I've been with Smartsheet for over 6.5 years. Was employee 82, and we're now I think over 1,700. So this week we celebrated our second anniversary. We went public 2 years ago on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's fun to be able to share and look forward to the interaction here.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Mike. And Darren, so Darren Nerland, coming from a little different perspective, but Darren as a learning strategist, kind of CLO type perspective, and also as a thought leader and keynote speaker, brings a real wealth of experience here. And Darren and I have worked together on and off throughout our careers. So Darren, appreciate you being here. Maybe you could say a little bit about your role at Degreed and how you interact with sales.
Yeah, so I work for a company called Degreed, which is a learning platform that we sell to enterprises. And if you think about talent development today, it really goes beyond learning, right? So even though I'm a learning strategist, I really work with HR organizations within these Fortune 500 companies to understand how to develop their talent for the future. So if you look at the future skills within organizations, even 2 to 3 to 5 years out, they're much different than you're seeing in the skills today. So from a degreed perspective, I also work with on the sales side to help them kind of map those ecosystems together and what does that look like. And we're hearing from a lot of our clients that are focused on talent development and skills development now, and taking this opportunity to really focus on their employees and help them upskill and move into those other directions. So lots of feedback from both sides, both our customers as well as on the sales side of how we're approaching it to organizations that are needing more talent development, even in this kind of slowdown that we're seeing across lots of industries.
Right, absolutely. We'll look forward to diving into that in more detail. So, and Gerry, welcome. So, also a client, GM Nameplate, and somebody we've worked with off and on over the years. And Gerry also brings a unique perspective of sales and marketing. So, wearing a big and multiple hats there at GM Nameplate. But Gerry, maybe you could say a little bit more about your role in your organization.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray and Matt, for having me today. So, GM, we're industrial printers, so we print on basically anything but paper for other manufacturers. So brand presentation and user interface across a wide range of industries, from aerospace and automotive and industrial, appliance and medical device. So we put the names and the user interface on all those products that people use every day. And so our sales process is 100% custom products for other manufacturers, very hands-on, very collaborative, very design-oriented. And so that process is one that normally is very much face-to-face design studios, industrial work, and one that normally is not done online, but done very hands-on with parts and with textures and with samples. And so the environment we're in today has been one that we've had to really adapt and align to, very different for us. And so it's been a dynamic change for us, with some markets up and some markets down, and reacting accordingly. And so been an interesting and dynamic one for us. We have 4 factories here in the United States, a couple in China and one in Singapore. So we've had to deal with a global dynamic as this has come on, as well as domestically.
Outstanding. Well, I love this, that we have a real mix of, I'll get back here, kind of a background of technology with a SaaS company, with a product offering in the learning space, as well as a manufacturing, and then services and training. So we have a number of different areas represented, and I think we'll see that as we go along and dive into more of kind of how is this impacted and what are we doing about it. So Matt, one of the things we wanted to do to kind of get things kicked off is to hear about the impact from our audience. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll here, and I'd love to hear from the audience just how this has affected them. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, and again, need to.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how people are responding to this. We've done a couple similar polls with sales leaders in other contexts, and even with sort of marketers, right? So, marketers indicating, how is demand generally? And, there's one thing to be saying, well, we're doing more campaigns or doing less campaigns. But when marketers kind of look at the general sources of demand, or some of the natural sources of demand, it's interesting to see where those are coming from. And some of those indicators are kind of canary in the gold mine for, or canary in the gold mine for businesses to say, if demand is down, then future sales might be down and future revenue might be down, right? I mean, and it's depending on how your business operates, seeing it in that order may give you a sense of what's coming down the road, and so you can better prepare the business for it. And if demand for marketing is down, that's an indication to sales leaders, okay, we might have to increase our own opportunity creation. We might need to put, see if we can put more focus on, existing customer, repeat purchases, upsells, to make up for the revenue, offset from customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the poll open. Thank you, Alonzo, for the support there. And what we'd like to do is we'll get an idea. So our revenue's up, and we're actually seeing some of that in technology, maybe in specific medical device or healthcare offerings. We're seeing increased demand, or at least in certain sectors. In some cases, it's business as usual. We've seen revenues declining for some of our clients, marginally. And we're saying the same as if it's plus or minus 20%, that's probably normal, but is it greater than 25 to 50% or even off over 50%? And I know in our business, I'll share, the pipeline didn't dry up, but one of the things we're seeing is it getting pushed out, and deals are, typically taking longer, and budgets are on hold, or at least it's longer to get approval. And I think all of us on the call can probably remember back to, both 2007, 2008, and 2001, where it wasn't so much that things went off the cliff immediately, but they just started delaying and started pushing out. So I'm going to go ahead and close the response here and publish this and share the results. So very interesting. And if I add these together, 75% of our audience today is off more than 25%. So in other words, they're 25 to 50 plus in revenues. And that's not inconsistent with kind of what we're seeing. How about you, Matt? Is that kind of consistent with what you would think?
Yeah, it's very consistent with what I've seen from a revenue standpoint. I think that what's heartening to me is when I look at revenue as sort of a lagging indicator of what's happening with sales and marketing, and I'm just seeing some evidence that sort of demand is picking back up, that marketing programs are seeing not just increased traffic and readership, but also just increased demand from companies that are sensing what the new normal is going to be like and saying, we got to get back to work. We got to get back to, we got to get back to buying and back to doing. So I think that this is representative of a blip that we're certainly seeing right now in many, many companies across industries. Yeah, I mean, this is a time of great change. And I think I was in an event earlier today, and there was a conversation about some of the changes we're having to make, and the fact that some of those changes actually are going to help us long term. We're forced to think more exponentially right now because of the limitations in how we can operate. And some of those things I think will become part of the new normal, that will be a welcome part of the new normal, because they're a more effective way of doing work. They're a more effective way of selling. They're a more effective way of actually working together, eliminating parts of commutes and making things just generally a better business as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into each of our panelists' kind of businesses and some of the things they're doing, but I'm curious if any other observations, Mike, Darren, Gerry, is this kind of consistent with what you would expect, or how does this resonate with what you're seeing?
Yeah, from the manufacturing standpoint, we serve a lot of different industries. So, aerospace is slowed way down and is shut down. Automotive is shut down. So we have markets that are off, more than 50% that aren't building anything. On the other hand, we've got medical device that, is up, hundreds of percent. And we've had to pivot, our people to making different things and adapting. So, we've got part of our business that is extreme, and how can we get stuff faster? And we have other parts that are absolutely shut down. So it's been a part of adapting and reacting within that. So it's a little bit of both. And the other part of that, of course, is supply chains are absolutely turned upside down right now, just because it happened first in China, and, people getting back to work in China, and then the ability to ship product to and from China has been a big impact from our standpoint. And so, people can't get things. So it's been a mix for us, and so it's completely changed how we react.
Yeah, great insights. Mike, how is this impacting? Don't need to get into numbers, but I'm curious, what's the impact been? What have you seen on your team?
It's, I think, very similar to what Gerry laid out industry-wise. It's interesting. It's dramatically different. We're doing a lot of work with some of the larger pharma, healthcare providers along that spectrum, and they have their hair on fire, and we can't support them fast enough on huge projects, some of which are impacting testing and working with a global agency right now that's trying to figure out how to move talent around. We also have major airlines who are just, as Gerry said, are just fundamentally shut down. So it's, we encourage our team to, first of all, connect on a human level, empathize, try to just share how are you doing and connect there. And then that sets the context for a business conversation. But, people people are, you've got individuals who are working out of a home with trying to manage a handful of kids who are doing homeschool. You've got people who are single. You got people who don't have. So you really got to understand both internally as I encourage my team, how do my managers care for our employees and our sellers, but also how the customer situation. Everybody's lives are thrown upside down right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to get back to that. In fact, let me, I appreciate everybody leaning in on the poll there and providing the responses. Let's talk about some of the strategies. So Mike started getting into this. We'll get back to some of the things Gerry's doing because I think they're really creative. But Darren, I'd love to understand from your perspective, kind of what's the impact that you've seen at Degreed, and what are you seeing the organization do to keep the team engaged and motivated? What's going on there, and or with some of your clients? And if any of the participants would also like to offer their thoughts in the question box, you can go ahead and chat that in because we'd love to hear from our audience. But Darren, what are you seeing, and what's creative that's really resonated with you?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things. So with Degreed, so we're a learning platform company, as I said before. So we're seeing sales stagnate, across the board when it comes to new sales, right? People are waiting for this to kind of die down. What does our money look like? So new sales on the platform are really lagging. What we're seeing though is with existing customers, they are coming back to us and saying, what does utilization look like? How do we build skills within our organization? So we're actually seeing some growth in that part of it. So more, renewals of licenses, consulting on how to get better skills within organizations. I think what we've done is change the messaging a little bit in not how can we just help you grow skills within your organization, but how can we help you in this time to also infuse some of that as Mike said, is how do we get personal with this? And so I think the innovative things that I think we're trying to do is really say, hey, not only can we help you with the technical skills and soft skills within your organization, let's give you some information on how to work remotely, right? So we're doing similar things like this, where we're doing webinars on how to work remotely. 80% of the Degreed company is a remote workforce anyway. So there's 450 of us, and most of us have been working remotely since Degreed started. So for us, it's easy to get on a webinar and say, hey, here's how you do some of these things. So we're offering some of those things to our customers. We've provided some learning pathways that help again with remote work, help with stress. So we're offering these things free of charge. People like that, and then obviously then they say, hey, you've got more to offer. We'd love to help you or talk to you a little bit more. The last thing I would say on this is we oftentimes say, hey, what can we do to just help our customers in this situation? So we developed a coloring book that we sent out to all of our clients and said, hey, everything's canceled. What are we going to do to help our kids pass the time so that we can do our Zoom meetings? So we created this coloring book that says, here's some activities in it and that sort of thing. We sent it out to our customers. They absolutely love it. Hopefully we're seeing some people saying, yes, that activity helped my kid stop from interrupting my Zoom meeting for 15 minutes. But those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do, is change the messaging a little bit, help our clients through webinars or through learning paths, and then just throw in a little creativity into it as well.
I've noticed that all three of you have referenced things in sort of the way you're adjusting this that address the giving customers and prospects some grace in this moment and addressing more directly the humanity of what we're dealing with. I mean, look, we all still have work to do. We all still have jobs, but we're doing it in a very different environment. Like Heinz homeschool is going on upstairs as we record this. I mean, it's off the rails on a daily basis, right? I mean, like I've got a weekly meeting where, if a pet or a child comes into the window of your webcam, that you're required to sort of grab them and have them say hi to everybody so we can wave, right? And so Mike, you had mentioned you've got people with, homeschools going off the rails. You've got people that are single, that are used to a social life and are lonely. I mean, there's real issues going on, and you have to address that. And I think part of the new normal might be the ability for us to make sales more human, to not just have sort of this business enterprise sales conversation, but to really sort of just leverage sort of the softer side of what's always been there, but maybe now people are more open to on both sides.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah, Gerry, I definitely want to get that. Let me just follow up on Matt's thought. I think if you're not starting your conversations these days with a check-in on how people are doing and a little bit more, we call it rapport building in our sales training curriculum. It's a fundamental skill, but never has it been more important to make that personal connection and just see how people are doing. And maybe there isn't even a sales agenda there, but we're just figuring out what's going on in their world. So Gerry, I know you had some really creative things that you're doing within GM Nameplate. Maybe you could follow up on that and share with us some of those things.
Well, I was just going to say, I really agree with Matt on his comments. I think a couple of things. One, the unexpected things that's come about with this is that the availability of people is more so than it's probably been in a long, long time, in that people aren't in meetings, they aren't traveling, they aren't in a conference, they aren't gone. And so the ability to get a hold of people is the best it's been in a long, long time. And so current contacts, past contacts, et cetera, the availability to have a conversation is the best it's been. And that's been one of the unexpected things. And so, for our salespeople to go back and reach out all the way through their contact list, and I mean deep, all the way back, inactive, has been a really unexpected. And it's not selling, it's checking in. It's with a very human side. How are you? How's your business? How are you being affected? And people have time to talk about that, and it's a very real conversation. And then if you're being impacted, is there something we can do to help? And a lot of times what we're finding out is how we're being asked to help is not what we expected, and it's something completely different. And we're working on new things. We tend to be, we are 100% custom manufacturer, but we designed face shields because there was a need. And we had, a whole bunch of people that were, we bake all the markers and placards inside Boeing aircraft, and Boeing shut down. So we had, people sitting around. So now we've made hundreds of thousands of face shields over the last, 2 months. And, so we put our people busy, and we had our salespeople busy. We put a flyer together, and they got to go sell those for a couple of days that they'd never done before with new contacts. But I'll go back to, people are available, and that's been a big surprise. And just building that rapport, and not that you're trying to sell right now, you're building the relationships with people that are very human and very real, and you're nurturing those relationships for when they have a need. And it might not be now. People are hurting in some cases, or their need is completely different than what we expected.
The other way we've thought about that, and this up at an event last week, is that, you're going to grow tomatoes in winter. You've got a lot of companies, right, that are, they're not able to buy. Some of them actually have need right now. Companies we're working with where they have need, they just don't have budget. Like, budgets are frozen. They still got to figure out where to go. So if you're thinking long-term about how to provide value, no matter what you sell, products, services, lean in with those companies, lean in with value you can provide, whether pivoting what you sell, or whether you're just giving someone, some advice and some counsel and even some empathy at this point. Your season will come, and that value right now is going to benefit you from a handful of people that can pay for it now, but your business, when the rebound comes, it's going to be a competitive differentiator for you as a brand and you as a sales professional when you lean into that.
Yeah. One of the things that we've done is a bi-weekly happy hour with sales reps and some of our customers. And we just invite them to come in, for half hour, 45 minutes. We're going to just chat. We're going to build that rapport and that relationship, right? So we just invite people. We have kind of a fun topic, and everybody raises a glass of wine or a beer or something like that. So we do it on Thursday afternoons. A sales rep is in charge. Again, not selling anything. We're just checking in. We're trying to be, humans where, hey, we would have taken you out to lunch, but hey, nothing's open. So let's just chat and just have some fun, And by the way, our sales rep reps love that because it helps them get energized as well, right? They love it because we're asking them to drink on the job, number one. number two, they're saying, hey, we are connecting. I think, Gerry, to your point, is we're reaching far back into our Rolodex as well, right? And saying, hey, who couldn't we invite just to have a check-in?
That's great. So Mike, I know you had some strategies at Smartsheet and you started touching on some of the things you're doing, but what else is going on there? How are you adapting and responding, especially for your enterprise sales team here?
Yeah, we over a month ago, we instituted a worldwide field ops weekly call. So it's a Zoom meeting. We've got over, I think, 650 people around from Sydney over to London. And that's all the customer facing organization, sales, success, support. And it's been a surprise in terms of unifying the whole organization around. We're really intentional about sharing customer stories where we're having impact and adding value. And you see the chats coming in, and it's like a barometer of how people are reacting. So we're doing some work with Herm Edwards, who's the coach of the ASU Sun Devils, and he kicked off we had him Zoom bomb us on Monday morning, and you'd have thought, I mean, if you don't know Herm Edwards, he is one fired up individual, and he came in and people were just like, they were so fired up. So we've done that, and that's been a really unifying event that people really look forward to. The other thing, we've seen these organic, we've got a guy in London who's a exercise guy. I don't think he's a personal trainer or anything, but he's instituted a weekly workout. And I was on a call with one of our recruiting managers, and she was all sweaty yesterday. And she said, yeah, I was just on Alex's workout and it's unifying people, and I think there's a building of relationships we've been touching on thematically, whether internally or externally. And to Gerry's point, encourage your sellers to pick up the phone and call. People want to talk and play the long game. It's not about closing the deal. We always got to make our numbers, but it's also about being attuned to how can you help somebody, because these are times when people will remember this when we get out of this, and you have an opportunity to differentiate how you connect with your customers and sell to them and care for them.
One of my really tactical things that I do, and that I know other people have done versions of as well, is I just have a running call list that I keep. And for me, it's an Evernote field page that I just keep adding people to. And after lunch, usually my kids are taking a little break from homeschool. My wife might be just taking a nap or whatever. I go for a walk. And there's like a 3 or 4 mile path, like loop around the neighborhood I go on, and I print out my lists and I just make calls, right? And it's just, so Gerry's point, it's some of them are prospects, some of them are people in our pipeline, some of them are people I haven't talked to in a while. I'm just checking in. I'm asking how people are doing, asking how their families are doing. It's a lot of voicemails, but it gets the house, like gets me a little exercise, but also it's that touch point with people that if you're doing it with authenticity, if you're doing it with integrity, I think it can have a really big difference. And a lot of those aren't going to pay off today, this week, but that investment, we talk about it, right? We can talk about it to a webinar with people on it, but we know that most people aren't going to do it or aren't going to do it consistently, or I'll fire up, I'll email, tweet at someone. Like, that's what everybody's doing, right? And so I want to do something that is outside of my 9 hours call, side of my inbox that's blowing up from people that are telling me they're worried about troubling times. Like, figure out something that is separate from what everyone else is doing, but also something that stands out with the humanity you put into it.
Absolutely. Love those messages. And I think there's never been a more important time. We talk about adding value, and that kind of gets kicked around, and what does that really mean? But there's never been a more important time to really think about our customers' business, think about the impact that COVID is having on them specifically, and if you can, them personally, and then offer something that helps. I'm a big fan of the Go Giver, right? It's a great series, but the Go Giver approach of what can we do today just to offer to say, hey, I was thinking about you, and this might help, and here's what we just did, or here's what another client did, and you offer that value. And I think that is beat your analogy here, Matt, but that's the tilling the soil and preparing the compost and getting the right seeds and, getting our tools in shape and whatever it is, so that when the growing season starts, right, we're ready to plant and to grow those tomatoes. So, there were a couple of comments from the audience that I just want to capture because I think this is really great input, and one from Greg. And Greg, I really appreciate you offering this because he said, based on today's update, we believe that we're nearing the marketing advertising low point. He works for a large media company and starting to see an uptick starting in June or Q3. So, I think everybody's like, we hope, and we're getting ready. But I think that's the, Matt, we joked about this. We had the before Corona world, the BC world. We're in the DC world now, right? The during Corona. I think we're hesitant to even say what after Corona looks like. During Corona may last a while, but at least we're starting to see that. How do we prepare for that? What do we do? And Darren, to your point, what do we take away today that is really working that we want to keep doing or cultivating? And I think that's going to be really important. So there are some other comments we'll get here, but yeah, really appreciate everybody's thoughts on this.
Well, I think using another cheesy analogy, race car drivers know that races are one curves, not the side, right? You can go as fast as you want in a straightaway, but once you hit a curve, you got to watch your speed, make sure you don't fall, but you will have to start accelerating at the end of the curve so you can maximize into the straightaway. We don't know where that straightaway is, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but I think the best companies right now, and this includes sales organizations, are thinking about, okay, how do I sell with empathy? How do I address the and respect the moment right now? But what am I doing to make sure that as we start to get close to the straightaway, we're accelerating again, not only for our own businesses, but to support our customers. I heard someone a couple weeks ago use the term, say, like, in addition to selling with empathy, there's a level of compassionate urgency we can provide to our customers to help them understand, listen, we're not out of this by just for someone else to figure it out, waiting for one day and say this night. Our proactive plan to move our business forward. And if you've built credibility with your prospect, if you understand their needs, if you understand the outcomes they need to be working towards, you can push your customers a little bit toward, and that's to their benefit in addition to your own.
No, great insights. Yeah, Darren, go ahead.
One of the things I would add here, so looking at the question again, what are the creative strategies your organization's deploying to keep your sales teams engaged and motivated? So we've been talking a lot about the client. I do want to touch on the personal aspect, right? So if you're in sales, right, or you're a sales manager, one of the things that I've been telling people across my organization, and as I talk to other people, is people are stressed right now, right? People are looking at layoffs. People in sales are saying, hey, I'm not going to meet my quota. So let's give a little bit of grace, right? Let's talk to each other, and instead of saying, hey, how's it going? We already know that it's pretty screwed up right now, right? So how can I help you? How can I be, someone that you can talk to? So within our organization, we're really reaching out to other peers and saying, hey, can we do a online chat, kind of a coffee online and checking in? What are some of the skills you want to build, as we're seeing some time on your calendar, right? Which is fine. We know that's going to happen. Is how can we develop you in this time? And so we're doing a lot of that right now is, if we're looking at sales, we're saying, hey, can we get better negotiation skills, better collaboration skills, those kinds of things. So how do we do that internally? How do we build our own skills as well as take care of our people? That's one of the things I think that we need to do more of, especially in this time. And it's a strategy I think that I'd like to see in our organization continue on. It shouldn't just be, hey, because before all of this, Degreed, we're a growing company. We're just, we're going full steam ahead on these things, and then you hit this wall, and you have to take a step back and say, okay, how as an organization are we doing? Do we understand each other? Do we care for each other? So again, those are the kinds of things that we're talking about openly in our organization from leadership on down, and they're sharing with us their own thoughts, their own ideas on this. So I think it's powerful to have those kinds of conversations internally with each other too.
Absolutely, could not agree more. So there's a question. I'd like to open this up to the panel because I think it's a really important one. It talks about the balance between humanity and money, right? So yes, we want to check in, yes, we want to build a relationship, but we also have a deal we want to get done. And how do we strike that balance? This is from a client of ours in Europe, so really appreciate that that question. Matt, I don't know if you have a thought on that, but love to hear from everyone. You know, how do you balance the, yeah, we want to build rapport and relationship and give them that grace, and we still need to talk business because that's the future.
Existed 3 months ago, right? I mean, before all this COVID happened, there's plenty of deals I want to close that don't close at my feed. So that's always going to be the case. I think, you know, if there's a compelling need and if there's some urgency on the prospect side to actually do something, I mean, these are qualification criteria have always existed. You know, then, you know, you may have a tightened budget, you may have hoops to go over in terms of budget. Like we have customers where, you know, the CMO, chief marketing officer, previously had budget authority to be able to thing. Now, you know, she has to go to the CFO, you know, at least temporarily to get approval on things, and so that makes it a little harder. Sometimes makes things a little slow. So if there's a need, if there's a established qualified need, continue to pursue that on behalf of your customer. Like you might need to reconfirm that all those criteria are still there. Tell you, like in my pipeline, there's a lot of Q2 deals that were sort of opportunistic for the customer, the prospect, that said, like, I'd like to get these things done. In a tightened budget world, they're just not going to happen this quarter. And so if I push and push and to try to get that deal done, I'm going to kill my ability to get it done in Q3 or beyond, and I'm probably going to hurt my relationship as well. So look, I mean, I you know, I think the hard lesson here is that, like, just because you want to close that deal doesn't mean you're going to close it. Just because you want to get that additional revenue doesn't mean you're going to get it. If you can find and be proactive at finding opportunities and that actually need what you have right now, great. But I think, you know, if you're taking the long view of customer relationships and business continuity and brand strength, you got to be careful sort of where you push and where you don't.
That's great. I'd love to hear from the panel. Any other thoughts on that? How do you balance that, and what are you doing, you know, to kind of walk that line?
I would agree with a lot of what Matt said. I don't think there's no magic recipe here. I think it starts with a relationship, knowing that's going to endure beyond this period of time. But if you push too hard, you're going to do damage to the relationship. And I think it's just being upfront and confirming if they've said they want to do it, confirm what it takes to do it. And if they don't, then be respectful of that. Again, this is back to sort of nuts and bolts, understand, agree on the process. And, you know, we've got situations where the internal, the team, the line of business exec wants to do it. They literally can't get their sourcing or procurement department to engage them to get the deal done. So they're as frustrated with their own internal team as they are with anything else. So I think it's, you know, you just be thoughtful and take a longer view, as Matt said.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All I would add is that in our particular case, what we thought the business opportunity was and what it might be right now is different. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we're going in and checking in and how are you doing and how your business is doing, and what the opportunity is coming up. Hey, I can't get parts out of Asia. Could you guys do something for us in the United States? Could we retool this or resource it? Or, you know, we need an interim solution, or we need to increase this or redo that. So, or I've got a company that I don't think is going to make it, or I need to increase this volume, or could we move it over? So we're finding different opportunities. And so the checking in is as much about finding what opportunities actually exist as it is what we thought we were going to try to work on. And it might be, hey, that new project is paused, but I got an existing project that I need help with, or a disruption of supply chain, or a plant that shut down, or something like that. So, you know, yeah, we need the money. We want the opportunities. But by checking in and being the guys that are still here and available, we're finding different opportunities. And so, and because we're the ones reaching out, we're the ones that are getting those, like, hey, could you, or do you know of, or yeah, that's something we could do. And so we're finding that we're really busy with different opportunities, and that's what's keeping us very busy, is by being the people that are following up and checking in and asking, how can we help? But it's not necessarily what we thought we were going to be working on. And that's a different side to it. The other thing I'll just add is that one of the other things is, as salespeople, we're always busy. We're always running all the time. We now have time to do a much better job than we've had. All that stuff that you say you're going to do, I'd research this better. I'd be better prepared. I'd do this. Yeah. I mean, we have time to be the very best we've ever been at researching an account, knowing what they need, and for my salespeople, it's been, if you've been you are going to research those accounts in your territory. If you're going to be better prepared for when you talk with them, you should be the best you've ever been. And let's practice on that. Let's go back and forth and do that. And there's no excuse. And so let's work on that. And so we've had every week it's been, what was one of the things that you didn't have time for that you now have time for, and let's get that done.
Great question. Yeah, no, didn't mean to cut you off. It's a great point.
The other thing I would point out, just tactically, is you're not, if a customer isn't ready to buy, if they don't have a need, if what you are offering doesn't bubble up to the top right now, and people's priority lists are a little tighter right now, then this may not be your season to sell. But there's also a difference between commitment and cash, right? And I think a lot of companies that aren't able to sort of buy right now are saying, I can't spend all that money. If you're in a position where you can spread it out into payments, if you could defer payment for a period of time. I've seen a number of companies that are getting creative in terms of financing to get the yes, to at least get a yes, to, even if the payments are going to be spread out, a yes to maybe a portion of the purchase. Things started to make it easier for procurement to say yes, for example, to getting something going now. It's a tactic that, some companies can do, some companies that are cash constrained can't do. But it's a tool in the toolbox that you can give your sellers as they get into negotiations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think understanding that commitment, and we have the concept of the customer alignment model. So where are they in their buying process, and where are we in the selling process? And sometimes we're misaligned, right? And that creates frustration on both sides. Well, are we taking the time to see where they are in that process? And guess what? The arrows can go backwards. So they may have been in kind of decision making. Well, guess what? They're back in, refining their requirements and gathering knowledge because the world just changed. So we need to back up with them and go through that discovery process with them. Maybe we need to re-educate them and work with them and align and take them through that process. But if we can develop a shared understanding about what that new process looks like, we can say, oh, okay, then we'll check in every month until July when you think you're going to have budget. Well, now at least we have an agreement, right? And we have a seat at the table versus I'm going to call you every week and bug you to close the deal, and they're just going to get upset and start ignoring your calls. So yeah, really, really great thoughts here. Let's continue on to the last piece, because I really want to make sure we capture other questions and thoughts from the group. And I appreciate those of you who have chatted in, and we'll try to link back to those at the end. But let's get back to this idea of what are you doing differently today that you expect is going to continue. And I imagine it'll hit on a lot of these themes, but I really like the idea of, one, you kind of have to be optimistic, or at least I have to be, because that's how you get through the day. So what are we doing that's positive that we want to take with us in our bag of tricks? Maybe we should have been doing it already to begin with, but let's go back. Maybe Mike, we could start with you, but what do you expect to do that you're going to institute across the organization or within your group going forward that you want to make sure your sales team's continuing?
Yeah, I think it starts with video meetings. I mean, we were doing them not consistently across the organization. And I find that being able to see somebody is a very different interaction than just having a voice. And so I think that'll be, I am going to ensure that we continue to do that and do it not only internally, but with customers wherever we can it's a, when if you're on a call like this and you've got two people who just have their names and there's no picture, it's a very different interaction. Like, why isn't that person willing to show their face? And so I think that's one. I think the other one is just that, that human connection. And my hope is that something that, again, internally and with customers, that we pause and build that connection first, because that then can set a different sort of tenor and interaction going when you get into talking business.
That's great. That's great. So Darren, what would you add to that? You know, kind of what are you thinking to take away here?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we've been working on internally. We use Guru as a knowledge repository, and so we, in the past, we've stored a lot of, you know, sales pitches and you know, how do you look at, you know, the different sales cycles. Internally, we've been kind of dividing and conquering and updating those, and it's a process that, number one, people have really enjoyed, because some of those Guru cards, you know, are year old, and we all know that it's a rapid change in these different industries. So that's something that we're really trying to stick with, and we want to stick with, is updating all of our assets, not from necessarily a marketing perspective, because those actually, people in marketing, they're really good at getting good assets out there. But from a sales perspective, we're pretty terrible at updating our own internal kind of guidelines and processes and that sort of thing. So we've been working on that. The other thing that we've been doing is working on different pitch decks for different industries. And so, and Gerry, you probably do this as well, is it's not always selling, you know, to big pharma. You don't use the same sales pitches you do to, you know, selling into finance or something like that. And Mike, you're probably doing this as well. So what we've been doing is updating these different pitch decks, and it's something, again, that we want to do better in the future and continue to do, is instead of generalizing it and then quickly on the fly, you know, saying, hey, we're going to adjust this for this industry. Those are the kinds of things that we're working on, is our own collateral and making sure we're moving forward and and keeping those up to date.
That's great. Gerry, what are some of the things you think you'll continue to do from a sales leadership perspective, or, you know, with your team going forward?
Yeah, you know, I have to resonate with Mike's first comment, and that is that we're going to schedule time and do everything we can to try to keep the personal side of selling and the relationship side of selling alive, and, you know, schedule time for that, because I think we got a long ways away from that. And we've gotten so wrapped up in our technology and our process and everything else, and yet that part of it has been, I think, a great reset to the process, and I like that, and I don't want to lose that. I also agree that leveraging some of the tools that we hadn't used, because so much of ours was face to face. We can leverage better, and the video versus a conference call is a good one. And we've had to train a lot of our people on that. And to Darren's point, we had to create an awful lot of content that was better than what it was for those type of advice, and do that better. And so I see that happening a lot more. I also see that the collaboration with our team, there's been a lot of things going on right now that we just can't control. And it's also really easy to get wrapped up into just, you know, circling on that. And we've tried to just keep really focused on, okay, what can we control? And let's focus on what we can do. And based on what we know, let's make good decisions, and let's just keep going with what we can control. And get our energy wrapped around what we can do. And because it's a solid decision, it's good efforts, and we're going to keep doing the right things, and keep following up with your customers that we're going to be here tomorrow, and we're going to keep doing the right things, and long term, that's going to pay. And so it's easy to get too wrapped up in the what we can't control, and just keep focused on what we can.
Great message. Matt, what would you add to that?
You know, there's I think we've seen so much focus over the last few years on digital selling and social selling and leveraging all these tools to connect. And, you know, I think throughout this hour, we've talked about selling with empathy, connecting with the people behind the buying decisions, leveraging. I mean, like it stinks that we can't be in person, but I agree with Mike. Like I haven't seen, like Mike and I talked a couple weeks ago, I haven't seen him in a while. That beard is phenomenal, man. I am impressed. So and to be able to like, and we've done a bunch of meetings where it's like this, where it's not like a presentation, it's a conversation. And when we first started doing it, I was really worried. We had a group of 40 CMOs on a breakfast meeting a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, how is it? I mean, with all these type A CMOs, how are we possibly going to like manage this? But when you can see each other, not that different than if we were actually sitting around a lunch table, like you can see people's mannerisms, you can see who's ready to talk, you can see when someone's finishing. And so even with 40 people in the room, it was surprising to me initially how natural that was. And so I think, even if we can't physically get together, you can't do that with customers that aren't like next door to you or upstairs. Doing meetings like this and connecting with people and calling people and using old school, like the way my dad used to sell type of tools, it's not back. It's always been there. And it's exciting to see that. I think there's going to be some staying power for a lot of that moving forward.
Yeah, and I think just like we saw with virtual education, right, with our kids, that they made that pivot one way or another. I mean, they're maybe still making the pivot, but at least overnight, essentially, we had to do it. And I think we're seeing that with our clients and with training, certainly. I mean, we've done virtual training for over 10 years, and it's always been a challenge to get people connected, to get them online, and much less to use video. And actually, Michael had a comment about, well, how do you encourage your customers to use cameras in a meeting like this? I think the good news is the barrier to entry has gone way down just in the last month, right? Where people are doing it, with their families, they're doing it with their kids. And so it's not unusual. And we just, for our meetings, turn the camera on. And I would say now 8 times out of 10, customer turns their camera on as well. We don't have to ask them, we don't have to beg them. Set it up as a video meeting and let them know, hey, I'm gonna be on video. And now they aren't embarrassed about what's behind them, right? So they probably thought about that, or at least they put a shirt on, maybe pants, maybe not, right? But I think that's really encouraging going forward. The other thing I just add to all of these comments, because we had the theme around sales management and leadership, is we're seeing the connection virtually with employees as well. If we're coaching, how do we do that using video? So how do we engage better in our one-on-ones, right? How do we show up and have a different kind of conversation than just beating them up in the sales meeting every week? But, we're using a lot of collaboration, Teams type or chat type things to connect daily. I'm on, probably every hour communicating back and forth in one way or another virtually over chat, and then having a daily check-in, daily stand-up call that we do on video to just connect the team for 15 minutes and make sure we're on the same page. So I think some of those things we're seeing incorporating into the environment that provides that connection. And as we say, from a sales coaching standpoint, gives you the opportunity to ask those questions, to listen to your reps in a different way using video than you might just on a conference call or cell phone. And also, let's make sure we're helping them get better as a result of those conversations. So really great insights. I want to open it up here just kind of in the last few minutes we have. We've got some great questions. Want to flip them to the group as well, but curious, let me just scan through our questions here. We have one actually I'd like to start with. I had the opportunity to address the UW Sales Certificate Program over the last week. And I know there are actually some of those folks on board here, but we have a new crop of people entering the workforce. They're entering new sales roles, and boy, that's a little intimidating. I'm curious, from your perspective, what would you say about a future in sales at this point? What does that look like going forward? Curious if any of you have thoughts on that.
Do it. Great career.
I mean, if you can sell in these conditions, imagine what happens when people start spending more money again, right? I mean, I think there's a level to which I think, when things are, and there's headwind, is when you really learn. This is when you get good at what you're doing. Like when money's flowing, people will buy nice to have things, right? And I think sellers can get lazy, marketers can get lazy, and then we can still hit our number. When budgets are constricted, but people are still doing business, I mean, companies that are laying people off are still spending money. Where are they spending that money? One way to think about that is, are you an essential service? How are you an essential service? How do you measure and position yourself as an essential service that people need moving forward? How are you the grocery store, the pharmacy, the hardware store, things people need to work? And so we have to, so this is an exciting time to be in sales and marketing, because I think it's forcing a level of focus and discipline that is going to make people that come out of this better sales and marketers moving forward. And if you're just beginning a career in sales, to learn how to sell now, what a fantastic way to kick off your career.
I love that. There's never been a more important time to really understand where our customers are, right, and how to help them. And think about their particular industry and those industries that are actually doing well, right? I mean, we know that there are people that are still hiring, that are expanding, or those that are at least still out there, meeting with customers and going through that. And this will, we will evolve past this, right? There will be a post-corona or after corona world. Not exactly sure what that time frame looks like, but coming out of that, there's demand and there's opportunity. So one other question from our audience today is just, one or two things that you think are most important for sales leaders to think about, right? So what would you think about giving guidance to your sales managers, if you will, coming out of this that could help them to motivate and engage with their team? Gerry, let's come back to you. And I know you touched on some of the themes, but what thoughts do you have on what our sales leaders can be doing going forward?
Yeah, we've put a lot more effort into keeping in touch with all of our salespeople, and we've had to learn with them. We've had to pivot, and so we're learning with them about what to do and how to do it. So we're spending a lot more time with them, and we're getting feedback on what content they need, the markets we're going after. So staying connected, being human enough to say, I don't know the answer, but let's go work on that. And doing that together, I say, is one of the things that we've really worked hard on, and be as reactive as we possibly can to that market. We've been able to reallocate people. We moved people from markets that weren't active to other ones, and we worked on those things together. So we've been pretty open and honest, and again been very connected and worked on things together. And I'd say that's probably is being more connected and communicated more than we probably have in a long time, because we need to be very reactive.
That's great. Well, let me just hit the panel on kind of closing thoughts here. I know we're at the top of the hour, but Mike, any closing words from your perspective?
Yeah, I would just to answer your earlier question quickly. Part of what I'm trying to do is sort of articulate the vision where we're trying to go as an organization, as a company, and serving our customers and adding value to our customers has got to be number one. I'm reading this book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and it's not about competition. It's not about playing the closing the next deal, maximizing the next quarter. It's about laying out a compelling vision that has our customer at the center of it, and then from that, to Gerry's point, what are the things we have to do differently to realize that vision in a world that is fundamentally changing? But I think as leaders, we've got to lay out what's that desired future state, and we've got to empower our leadership teams to go understand that, and then go drive the right strategies that at their base are going to involve a lot of change, and then we got to enable change.
Absolutely. I had that conversation with a client this morning about how do managers get really good at communicating their tactical plan. We don't need the 2-year plan right now. We need what are we doing in the next 60 to 90 days? And here are 5 things you should be thinking about every day. And if we can get them thinking about that and waking up thinking about the attack plan, I think that's going to really help get us through this. Darren, what other closing thoughts do you have?
2 thoughts. So one is, take care of yourself, right? So take care of yourself. Make sure that you take time for yourself. As a leader, everybody always talk, well, not everybody, but we're starting to talk about, Zoom exhaustion, right? So everybody's on Zoom meetings or on WebEx meetings. So take time for yourself, get out, take a walk, those sort of things, socially distant, of course. So that's number one. Number two is build your own skills. I mean, I think that one of the things that I've realized over the years is when I get some downtime, I look at my own skills and say, how can I build, whether it's, better emotional intelligence, whether it's, my own, data visualization interests. Those are the kinds of things that I think we should be doing as leaders, is making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and building our own skills.
That's great. Yeah, the whole sharpening the saw, right? There's never been a time since we may not be able to be sawing a lot of lumber these days, or whatever the analogy, but we can definitely be sharpening and preparing the soil, and we'll mix all the analogies. Matt, let me have you offer final comments. I know Alonso's anxious to kind of wrap things up here, but what else would you add, Matt?
You know what? I think across all of our sales and marketing efforts, just to be human, to accept and understand and to lean into the humanity of what we're doing. It's not just a sales strategy. It's not just, what you put into your copy. Like, I mean, there's a lot of companies I think we're seeing in the emails and television commercials we're getting that are kind of faking empathy, right? That are saying the right thing, but it don't feel like they mean it. Like, be a company brand, be a marketer, person that means it, and how that manifests its way across every touch point you have to your customers and to your market.
That's great. Brilliant. Well, I just like to thank all of you for your participation today and collaboration. I learned a number of things and was taking some notes and thinking through this. So love the creative ideas and the energy and the interest. And also, I'd have to say the positive nature of the discussion of, what is working and what can we do going forward, and we will get through this. So, I think that's the message, is we may get through this and be stronger because of it. Because at the end of the day, these are the right things, as a number of you said, that we should probably be doing anyway. So great messages. Alonso, I'll turn it back to you to wrap us up.
Thank you, Ray, and I'd like to double thank all of you for being here today, and also for our audience who are staying with us a couple minutes past the top of the hour. Really quick, to learn more about, if you want to, if I highly recommend that all of you take advantage of the resources that we have here at the Sales Readiness Group in Heinz Marketing. We have tons of complimentary content. And then finally, we're about to shut the webinar down, and you're going to get a short survey that pop up in your screen. And we appreciate any feedback you may have for us. We are constantly working on this series to make it better. With that said, again, Ray, Matt, amazing job moderating the event today, and our panelists. Thank you so much for all your insights and tactics. And finally, thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay.
Thank you. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.